Good evening, everyone. Once again, we are starting time now. You are welcome to Eretmis Cyber Chat. We do this every Friday night. And like I always say, you could have been anywhere else on Friday night, but you chose to be here to share in the knowledge and also to interact with the whole entire family. So we appreciate it. And we are going to make sure, as usual, the hour or so that you spend with us, you are going to gain something that you can put in your toolbox as a security professional or as an aspiring security professional. And tonight, our discussion is going to be on the National Vulnerability Database that we use in the information security or cybersecurity space. So we are starting time now, and you are welcome to Eretmis Academy. Eretmis Academy is the institution that brings you this every Friday night. And I am your facilitator, Dr. Emmanuel Edu. I'm a former United States Army captain. I'm a QSA, working in a QSA company. I'm also the founder of Eretmis Academy. I'm a former professor at the University of Maryland Global Campus and CTC. And I love to share my cybersecurity knowledge and background and experience. And I love to instruct and teach and share the knowledge. So you are welcome. And it's going to be a very interesting discussion tonight. Now, Eretmis Academy, we are CompTIA authorized partners. So for everybody in the family, and when you do join us for Cyber Chat, you get a 20% discount or all CompTIA vouchers that you want to purchase for any CompTIA certification that you are looking to sit for, right? And then also, we always stress on this. So if you've taken any CompTIA certifications already and it's time for you to renew, you can always use continuous education and use Cyber Chat as a way to renew without sitting for the exam again, right? So, and we have a WhatsApp group at Eretmis. We have a WhatsApp group. You can join the WhatsApp group to learn more about cybersecurity, and also for our activities that we do within the cybersecurity space, we post it on there. Cyber chats are posted on there on a regular basis, so you can also join as well. And the link will be posted as we are moving on with the discussion. Right. And for our YouTube channel, we are transmitting live on our YouTube channel now. All cyber chats are posted on YouTube. And basically, our foundation on YouTube is just cyber chats. All cyber chats are posted on there. We hit 100K milestone a while ago, so we just got our plaque. Now we are at 808, 388. You know, I wish we were 803. So 388. Our agenda for this year is to hit 1 million by the end of the year. They're about around October-ish. So agenda 1 million. We encourage everybody on here to help support. Spread the word. There is a lot of good information that you are going to get on there if you want to, work in the cyberspace or learn more about cybersecurity careers, and different topics within the cyberspace. So you are all welcome to help us reach our goal. And I know some cyber chats in the future to come. We will be here celebrating the 1 million milestone that we've hit. So with that, we are going to move into our discussion topics for tonight. So tonight we will be looking at some cyber news. We open the floor for at least 2 or 3 or 4 people to contribute to the cyber news, and then we will look at the National Vulnerability Database as our discussion topic for tonight. So before we jump into the cyber news that Dr. Edu is bringing to us tonight, I'm going to open the floor for at least 3 people. Please raise your virtual hand, and we will allow you, if you came across any news that borders on cybersecurity that you think is newsworthy for everybody else within the family to also hear, you can raise your virtual hand and bring it up, and we will discuss and then move on. But I have 2 that I'm going to talk about tonight. So anyone from the audience with any cyber news for us tonight can raise your hand, virtual hand, and then we are going to give you the floor and we will move on. Yeah, there was a couple. Oh, Jamal, please go ahead.
Hey, Dr. Adu. I don't know how it would happen, but I'm looking forward to hearing about what happened with CISA. They broke into our government And I'm befuddled about how that happened. I mean, was it a 0-day attack, or where was the weakness at?
So for that, there is really not much information at this time. We know they were able to kind of break into, but there is more details to follow. So I digged into that, but they are really tight about it. Probably maybe next week they're going to give more information, or if somebody knows some more information about the type of attack and how they were able to breach them, you can also bring it up. Right. Go ahead, Mike.
Oh, did you say Mike?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So a few days ago I ran into this publication talking about the NSA guidelines to zero trust. And basically the zero trust is talking about looking at everything that is within our organization as ours and everything outside as theirs. And under normal circumstances, we should trust everything that is ours and then look at the other side with a different eye. But zero trust is kind of telling us that we should not trust anything. We should verify every credential from any device or user that is trying to access our network. And then in the same vein, this morning I heard something about a clothing chain. They experienced a data exfiltration, but then they reported that they are even though users' information were taken, they couldn't take the PIIs. So I was thinking that it connected this for me, thinking that probably they had a good segmentation practice. That's why the exfiltration did not impact their PIIs. So that's what I ran into today, this week.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. And I think so what Mike was saying, like the broader perspective to look at it, is not just them having a good segmentation, but what is the keyword that everything falls under in terms of the controls we put in place during design? Anybody? For $5? Like, what area of security do we focus on putting layers of defense in place? Not the concept defense in depth, but defense in depth also falls under a specific area of cybersecurity.
Could it be networking? The network?
No. So this is like a conceptual area of security, right? It has to do more with design.
Data loss prevention, a good setup of data loss prevention.
Oh, okay. Not really.
What about hardening?
Yes, hardening also falls under that concept.
Could it be data loss prevention?
So data loss prevention, hardening, which data loss prevention is part of, defense in depth, all those concepts, they fall under a broader umbrella of cybersecurity. How do we call that broader umbrella?
Risk management, isn't it?
Well, everything falls under risk management. So, but this
Isn't it a response?
People, processes, and technology.
Say that again, please.
People, processes, and technology.
Yes, it covers people, processes, and technology too, but there's a specific name that I'm looking for, or word.
The application layer?
No.
Secure data handling?
Okay, so let me give maybe more clues. Yeah, more clues. You know, in security, we have areas like risk management, identity and access management, cryptography. One of those areas is
Steganography?
No, steganography falls under
Incident response?
now incident response. No.
Risk control.
We've even done cyber chat on this one before as a full-blown topic.
DLP?
No, I wouldn't go with DLP. Cybersecurity architecture.
It falls under the architecture.
Yeah, cybersecurity architecture.
That's right, that's right.
So architecture and design And that is where we plan everything that we are going to do for security within our organization. So the hardening that we are going to do, that includes, the DLPs, everything that everybody's talking about, they all fall under the broad umbrella of cybersecurity architecture, right? So the different layers we are going to put in place. So from what Mike was saying, if you have a very good, architectural setup, it means you've really hardened your system. So attackers might be able to get on your network, but they wouldn't be able to do much. So great input from Mike. Thanks. Now we are going to move on to the cyber news that we have tonight. So this is Congress. Now there's a law that has been passed by Congress, which is in the right direction, because I always complain that in the United States, you might think with everything that we are putting in place for security, we will have a data privacy law, like a general data privacy law for the whole entire country on the federal level, but we don't, right? Some states has it, like California, and now New York has one, Virginia also has one, but California started with CCPA, and everybody else is following suit. But as a nation, we don't have a data privacy law or data privacy, something on those lines, right? But in Europe, they have GDPR and the rest, right? But this week, Congress passed a bill that is, maybe we are taking baby steps, but we are eventually going to get there. Now, this bill kind of overshadowed by TikTok and all that is going on around TikTok. So we really didn't hear much about. That is why I decided to bring this up for all of us to take a look at. So this bill, the goal, this is a data privacy bill. And the bill seeks to prevent, and still, is like I keep saying, is baby steps. The bill seeks to prevent third parties who buy and sell our information, so our personal information. Did you know that TikTok, WhatsApp, Facebook, they sell our information, right? Aside the ads that they get money from, they sell our information to also get money, right? So, and there are, professional brokers who buy and sell this information. Now, this bill that has been passed, the goal is to prevent these professional brokers from selling any of these information, any of the American information, right, to our enemies, quote and unquote enemies on the national level. So eyeing China and Russia, right? So geopolitical adversaries. That is how they put it, right? China and Russia. So this bill is preventing. So if you're a third party and you could do that in the past, now when it is fully passed, if you do that, that is going to be a crime, right? But what this bill didn't really cover was they are only targeting the data brokers who are just third parties buying from Facebook, Apple, and those folks. But they really didn't target the main giants who are Apple, Meta, and the other big tech companies and social media companies. So maybe the next bill or something, they'll come up with something later on. So these companies, they still can do whatever they want with our data. There's really not much regulation around what they can do with customers' data. Unlike GDPR in Europe, where it is advocating for how companies use customer data. So at least, there is a bill that is targeting at least one group within that space. So maybe eventually, we are going to get there. So you can look more now. This bill was passed in the House. It is heading towards to the Senate, just like how the TikTok passed the House and then went to Senate. Same deal, right? So that is one of the big news that I thought everybody should know about. And now this other news we are going to look at, it borders on credit card and debit card information. So it borders on PCI. And I also thought we should bring this up. Now, there is a bank, not such a huge bank, but probably I might be mistaken, right? A bank located in Massachusetts. They canceled most of the customer debit cards that they issued to their customers because one of their merchants an unnamed merchant, their network was penetrated or their network was breached. And the attackers, they were able to stay on the network for 8 months, right? 8 months before the merchant was aware that they've been breached and the attackers were on their network the whole entire time. And so because of that, the bank, is assuming or they believe debit card information from their customers might probably might be breached or might have been compromised. That is the right word. And they got this information from MasterCard. So because of that, they canceled most of the cards and probably going to be issuing new ones to their customers, which is a big headache for the company. Now, this borders on what? It's not the company that was breached, not the bank itself, but is one of the merchants that they deal with or that they work with. Right. So what is the connection? What should this bank do? Now, moving forward, what are some of the things they can put in place to make sure, things like this wouldn't experience, issues like this? Go ahead, T.
Okay, there we are on the mute.
Yes, Daniel, please go ahead.
Yeah, they would need to implement best practices using PCI DSS, since it's the credit card issue. Maybe look at using data loss prevention technology. Those two for starters, and I'm sure there's plenty more, but those two come to mind.
Okay, now for the bank, right? What can they do? So all the things that you said is right, but they were not the ones who were breached. So the attackers were not on their network necessarily. But then the attackers were on the unnamed merchant's network. So the bank is dealing with a third party. What can they do?
So the third party's way of monitoring documentation has to be audited frequently to avoid such things happening. They should make sure that they have the proper way of handling and protecting data.
Okay.
The bank should ensure that that's the risk assessment they should have done first to make sure how they handle data.
Okay. Nebichi, please go ahead.
I was going to say that the first thing that they missed usually during onboarding was like a thorough inspection of their data handling practices, and then also making sure that they had controls that were aligned with the kind of data they were supposed to handle for the company that got breached. A multitude of other things that I could add based on third-party risk management, but I'll say those mainly their risk posture, or their InfoSec policies around data handling, and then just maybe they missed some stuff during due diligence and onboarding.
Okay, great point. Jamal, please go ahead.
Yeah, I'm kind of piggybacking on what he said. It should have been third party. They should have had the QSA done, and that should have been approved. Everything should have been gone through from the last document and from the last, in the last test from QSA. So someone dropped the ball somewhere in there.
Okay, go ahead, Prince.
So, Dr. Edu, your question was, what should the bank do now that their third party has been breached? Is that correct?
Yeah, moving forward, I mean, what are some of the things that they can do to make sure they don't find themselves in such a spot?
Okay, well, I think first of all, the most feasible thing to do is to drop that merchant or third party and then go with another third party, because clearly it looks like the third party that was breached didn't have proper controls in place. So I don't think it's proper or it makes sense for them to continue to do business with that third party, cut their losses, and then go with another third party. Make sure they go through that third party risk process to verify the new third party that are going through, to make sure that they have a proper controls in place, and then change that third party to another one.
Okay, great point. Ucheba, and then we will take Eric and we'll move forward. Go ahead, Ucheba.
Yeah, with me, I think the person that is doing the continuous assessment and monitoring, their controls, they have to do that frequently, because with that, they will be able to know if there's a breach or any vulnerabilities in their dealings.
Okay, thank you. Ucheba, please go ahead.
Okay, well, I think what they can do is to provide a secured online platform with strong authentication measures, and make sure that the customers are safe using practices and common scale. And they use inscriptions and tokenize it to protect card holder data.
Okay, thank you. So everything that everybody said was good. Joe, go ahead and we will move forward.
Yeah, from the background information you gave, it looks like they don't have third-party, as a risk management system at all in place. So I think that would be the main issue dealing with the next third-party, services. They have to make sure they are implemented.
Okay, so from what we gathered from the news, we don't know for sure the status of the third-party risk management program for Yield Bank, but I'm assuming they will have something like that in place. Mostly when you are dealing with other companies aside yourself, the only way that you'll be able to ensure, at least to ensure that they are doing everything right in terms of security and they don't get breached, and then which is eventually going to affect you, is to make sure they have, for you as a company, you have a very good third-party risk management program in place, right? So whoever is your third party or whoever are your third party folks, they are taking everything that they are doing very seriously. They are paying attention to detail, right? Mostly for our cybersecurity internship, the GRC internship that we do projects on third party. And I tell everybody in the third party space, there are different tools that help and enhances what we do, but you are the most important tool, right? There is no tool in third party that can work better than what you can do, because you have to pay attention to detail, the documents you are examining, the different reports, compliance reports that they have, their policies, like somebody mentioned, right? Their policies and everything, you have to pay specific attention. The service level agreements, pay close attention. I think we had Noah, one of our third-party experts, when we interviewed him and he was talking about he doesn't use any tool at work, and he's a third-party person for his company, right? But what he does is, scrutinizing documentation upon documentation, and if you don't pay attention, you are not going to catch a lot of stuff, right? And companies who, if their paperwork is all jacked up, what else is jacked up? So don't really know what happened for this breach to occur, but I think what we can do to protect ourselves as companies is to make sure we have a very robust third-party risk management program. So at least we know for a fact that we've done our due diligence, we've gone above and beyond to make sure that whoever that we are working with, they are taking security very seriously. Jamal, please go ahead and we'll move on.
Okay, Dr. Du, it said they were on the network for 8 months. So we're supposed to be doing scans quarterly. Some of the scans, the ASVs. So they weren't doing the scans, it looks like.
Yeah, so for that, I mean, we can, look at it from different perspectives. Now, for some hackers, they are very sophisticated, they are very good, there is a way to do that. We call it persistence. You get onto a network and you just stay there, right? And there's a way to clean your tracks whilst you are on there. So they don't, when we say they stay there for 8 months, it's not like they were on the network 24/7, but they had a way, they had kind of a backdoor whereby they could easily come on and then leave, right? So it's like I break into your house, unknowingly to you, I've created a door, right? Maybe somewhere behind your house that you are not aware of. Everything in your house seems okay. When I come in, I don't mess stuff up. So you don't see that I'm coming in and out, and I'm living in your house with you for the past 8 months, right? That is how this is.
So
right?
there's no scanning program or software that can detect
Yeah,
backdoor
you'll
entries
be
like
able
that?
to. Yeah, if they are paying specific like they are paying particular attention, they will be able to catch at least find some traces, right? So it's not like it's not like there's nothing they can do to discover this. There is a lot that they can do to discover this actually. But if you are doing business as usual, just nothing is really happening, so we are just there chilling, then somebody can stay on your network for a very long time. You wouldn't even
Okay.
know.
Well, we need
So
to
you
know
have to
about
be.
those tools.
Yep. Yeah. So that is if we get complacent in our companies, that is what happens. Like that is what is going to happen. Then the attackers can get on there and just stay there. Eric, please go ahead. Eric, go ahead.
I want to know if the bank doesn't have any penetration tester that they employ to be testing their systems, whereby they know there might be some kind of vulnerabilities or a breach with regard to what happened.
Well, they didn't say, and we don't know that for a fact. So maybe probably like doing pen testing, they probably also run into this. So that could have been a way of them discovering also as well. So yeah, that is an option. Andy, please go ahead and we'll wrap up and move forward.
So, Dr. Du, from what you said, anything, it could have happened to anybody. It could be the bank itself happening to them.
Yeah.
So the best, it's already happened. To avoid that happening in the future, I believe is finding the root cause of the whole thing, so that it will help the bank as much as helping the third party. Because if you don't know the root cause and you just go ahead and fire them because that happened, you don't solve the problem. It can come again from another angle.
Yeah,
so
true.
Just like, so as it just so happens that is the third party that be the target. How about if you are saying fire the third party? What if it happened to the bank itself? Would you fire yourself?
Then they'll fire themselves. Yeah, but great point. Everybody made great point. So with that, we are going to move into our discussion topic for tonight. That is the National Vulnerability Database. What is it? What do we use it for in the security space? What are the use cases? And what are the components of the National Vulnerability Database? So, but before we move on, so everybody has been to the doctor at least one time, right? Now, when you go to the doctor, I'm no medical doctor, but not a medical doctor. So when you go to the doctor, right, and they are diagnosing you, you have this type of illness or this type of, disease. Do you think they have kind of like a database that based on your symptoms, they'll be able to reference and say, okay, based on these symptoms, it might be this or it might be that, right? And then that together, so based on your symptoms together with some other tests they are going to do, well, how do they reference that? I mean, anybody in the health space can speak to that. Do you have any database that you refer to? I mean, how do you determine the type of sickness? And how do we know all the sicknesses that are out there, right? All the illnesses that are out there. So the health people, now this is your call, right? Eric, go ahead.
Apparently, we use like cases that have happened before in the health sector. That's what we do. Frequent cases and similar diagnosis and symptoms will help us to also diagnose another person if they have the same symptoms. And with the labs and everything, that goes into it. So that's how the doctor is able to make that decisions based on experiences and stuff like that. Yeah.
So my follow-up question is, those symptoms from other patients, who document those? And if that was in hospital A, how will hospital B get their hands on that information?
We have a portal that right now is going through all the health sectors use the same portal. So it's like information is being transferred from one healthcare center to the other. So that's what they use.
Okay. So we'll move on to Rainey, please go ahead.
Well, I was going to agree with what he said. They do use the ICD-9 code and procedure codes to identify certain diagnoses because in some cases, they may not have been the one time. It could have been several patients that came in with the same similar diagnosis. So we do that. But when he said about going to different medical centers, if you have a provider network, that's what they do. They share information if you are inside of that network that belong. Like we have Inova in Virginia, and anyone that's affiliated with Inova, then they would have access to that diagnosis and information.
Yeah, so you mentioned something at the beginning. You said you had something that we draw from. Can you say that again?
I was saying that. Okay, so we have the ICD-9 code right now. It's ICD-10.
Like what is it?
It's a diagnosis code that we use, and we generate everything from those codes. You get paid on, they get paid under those codes. So that's what triggers a lot of the information. Most of the time the doctor say, what was the diagnosis? And you say it was, 78334, whatever. But yeah, those diagnosis codes are serious.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you, Rainey. Andy, please go ahead.
You're welcome.
So I say is the lessons learned. That's the purpose of a lessons learned. So whatever has happened before, they must have some kind of documentation. So if they need to reference any of that, they can get it from lessons learned.
Okay. Anybody else? Nobody else in the health side, or who has any inside scoop on, the types of, how do we have like a catalog of all these illnesses in the world that doctors and hospitals can easily reference from, and okay, so this is that, or that refers to that, kind of do that their diagnosis and stuff. Anybody else before we move on?
Dr. Do, this is Osai here. My 2 cents piggyback on what others have said. I think every it might be the same disease and whatever, but they still have to conduct a test, maybe MRI, lab test, or whatever, to see and to proper diagnose what is happening to you. Okay. So every patient, no 2 individuals are the same, even not identical twins. So it might be this for this person, though it might be cancer, but it might be happening here. It might be different cancer. It might be different cancer. So different tests can also help.
Okay. Glenda, please go ahead.
Okay, so to piggyback on everything that was said, I am a medical coder. I have worked at hospital for 15 years. Great. So like they were saying that you go to different hospitals or doctor's office and the information is covered across the board. So if you go to another state or whatever, they can pull up your chart and see all of that. And like the young lady was saying, the codes now, it used to be ICD-9, but now it is ICD-10 because WHO, the World Health Organization, changed those codes. I think it was probably back in 2014 when they changed the codes to ICD-10. So, like everyone was saying, when the information is shared, if someone breaches that information at a hospital or a doctor's office, they do leak the patient's information out there, which they shouldn't do because it's under HIPAA. You took the oath under HIPAA not to put people information out there to be shared with just anybody because it's your information. So, and when there's a breach like that, that protocol have to be in place to secure it, to follow all the protocols to cybersecurity or charts or whatever it may be that they're using, so people information is not vulnerable and out there.
Okay, thank you, Glenda. So, well said. Everybody made a great point. Now, I was just wondering, right? And what has this got to do with the National Vulnerability Database? Sick people in the hospital, and well, let's move on to our next slide. So, you know, our medical folks, they mentioned ICD, right? ICD code. Now they said they have code 10 from 9 to 10. Now, the World Health Organization, right? They've been around for a long time. They thought it wise to come up with a system whereby they're able to catalog all the different diseases and illness to have kind of a common database where we can, regardless of where you are in the world, you know, all hospitals and the different softwares and different vendors that you are using, they all draw their information from this database, right? So if there is a certain type of disease, that is why, you know, you go to the hospital, they do the various tests, be able to tell you, you know, it fits this type of illness, and they start treatment on those lines. And then also, I think like with the code, I don't really know like the spin-off with the code, but maybe probably based on the disease, they gives it like that gives it the number which is going to be the code, or I don't really know how that aspect works, right? But I know they have kind of like a collective resource whereby they are able to. So, and I think this is based on as human beings, as we are living, we get ill, we get sick. That information, the type of illness, the symptoms, all that is being documented, and that is how they came up with this. So it's a globally used for diagnosing, you know, different type of illnesses, and also for health management and clinical purposes, right? So on the health side, when we are sick as human beings, you know, there is something for us to bounce off, maybe our symptoms and everything else to, you know, get the type of treatment that we need, right? And there are different, you know, resources like the PubMed and the rest that hospitals use. And then also, like we were just discussing, they have different softwares whereby if you were in New York and you go to Virginia, they'll be able to pull up your medical record and the rest on there as well. You know, so we have that system to help manage our health, you know, how we live and how we do everything when it comes to good health, or like our health management in general, right? Now, when it comes to our computers, when your computer gets sick or your network gets sick, how do you know the type of disease or illness that is plaguing your computer or your network, right? Do we also have some database that we can easily, you know, look at the symptoms and reference and say, maybe it's this type of disease that your computer is suffering, or is that type of, you know, I know most of us, or in the general space, like when your computer is acting up, you're only going to say, I think maybe probably it's been infected by a virus, right? But a virus is only a type of malware. It can be a virus, or it can be other forms of malware. It can be ransomware attack, like a ransomware or other forms of malware, but the general public just calls everything malware virus. Right? So if it's a virus, what type of virus? Or if it's not a virus, what really is wrong with your network or your system that can, you know, enable attackers to easily get onto your system, or attackers are the ones who infected your system in the first place, right? Do you think it makes sense, as we have in the health side, to have something else also for, you know, the computer side or the IT side? So when our systems are sick or they are not acting as they are supposed to, we can easily reference from and say, okay, it might be this or it might be that. That is where the National Vulnerability Database comes in, right? So vulnerability, simply a weakness in our system. Illnesses and diseases are also weakness in our bodies, right? So they kind of follow similar trend. So for our systems, our networks, vulnerabilities are weaknesses that we identify in them. And those weaknesses can be man-made, or it can be made unintentionally, or it can be we configuring things wrong. It can be a whole host of, things, right? Now, these types of vulnerabilities, what are the symptoms, and how will we be able to really identify that, what happened to your system, or what happened to your network? If it happens to a different system or a different company's network, how do we reconcile and ensure that, oh, it's the same type of, vulnerability that you're experiencing, right? And what are the remediation, or how do we fix it? Just like when you go to the hospital, you are sick, they've been able to identify this type of sickness. This is how you are going to treat it. And they give you a whole list of things you have to do, right? And medications that you have to take. Now, on the IT side, when we find these vulnerabilities, how do we also fix it, right? What are the recommendations? And so just like how on the health side, they are sharing information and they have a common database and common resource that they use, same thing here. So in the whole world, if somebody knows anything different, they should let me know. But as far as everybody in the cybersecurity space and information security space, as far as we know, the National Vulnerability Database is the only common place where, or the only resource that has all the known vulnerabilities, keyword is known, all the known vulnerabilities in the world, at one spot. And that is what everybody uses in the world, right? And this was created by the Department of Commerce, and specific department that created this under the Department of Commerce is the National Institute of Standards and Technology, that is NIST. So NIST was tasked to come up with the National Vulnerability Database. So the National Vulnerability Database is simply a database or a common place where we have all the information about vulnerabilities that exist in the IT space, right? Specifically looking at the cybersecurity, information security space. So every known vulnerability, and keyword is known. There are some vulnerabilities that are not known yet, 0 days and the rest. If it is known, it is going to be in this database. And this is what everybody uses in the world. I mean, everybody, right? Until somebody comes up with something else, this is what we use. So if you've never heard about the National Vulnerability Database, this is the genesis of it and the idea behind why we have the National Vulnerability Database. It's for the US government, made by NIST, and is open to the whole entire public. The reason for it is to, provide for NIST coming up with this is to provide public service. So not just to the federal and the states government, to the government, but to the whole entire United States and beyond. So outside the continent of US, everybody in the cyberspace, everybody uses this also as well. So we are going to look at the different aspects of it and what it really entails and what really goes into this. But this is the backbone of everything that we do in security, right? Because everything that we are doing in security is to help reduce risks to an acceptable level. Now, risks involves threats taking advantage of your vulnerabilities. So if we can manage our vulnerabilities, we don't know the type of vulnerabilities that are out there, then we will really run into a problem of managing risks, right? So that is why I'm saying this plays a very key and vital role in everything that we do in the security space. Now, NIST also came up with SCAP, and SCAP is Security Content Automation Protocol, and that is the NVD is based on SCAP, right? SCAP is a tool, we can call it a tool that helps us to be able to really name and structure vulnerabilities. We are going to look a little bit more into SCAP. So this is also some, if you are not familiar with SCAP, you are also getting to know it here tonight. So for our National Vulnerability Database, what we get out of it is a database of security checklist references, security-related software flaws, and some hardware flaws also as well, product name and impact metrics. And we are going to look at all these as we are moving along, right? So SCAP is also a product of NIST, and simply it is used for standardizing and formatting, and also coming up with names or nomenclature for software flaws and security configuration flaws, you know, and how it is being communicated to software and then also to humans. That is where SCAP comes in the picture, right? So you can dig more into this also as well. But this is just a side note. Now, obviously, the National Vulnerability Database is the cornerstone of everything that we do globally in the security ecospace. And information that it provides, it helps us on, you know, tactical planning, day-to-day operations, and then also policy development within organizations when it comes to cybersecurity defense. So the role of the National Vulnerability Database in cybersecurity, we kind of touch on it, is the backbone, is all of that. But there are specific areas that it really hits hard, or like specific areas that it makes a very great impact, right? And one area is it enables us to have a centralized vulnerability data, a centralized vulnerability data, right? And then also standardized severity scoring. So the vulnerabilities that we are identifying or that we have in the list, the National Vulnerability Database, they've also come up with a way to score these vulnerabilities in terms of high, low, medium, right? So helps us with prioritization. So prioritizing which of these vulnerabilities to fix first, just like how in the health side, for the diseases, they have it labeled where they know, okay, this type of disease, you have to start moving, do A, B, C, without wasting any time. You know, this one we can wait a little bit on. So when it comes to in the health sector, they'll say triaging. Now, when it comes to the security side, we also triage, right? And triaging means prioritizing and ensuring what are we going to handle first, and then followed by what, and followed by what, right? So in the vulnerability space, we can have a bunch of vulnerabilities identified. Which ones do we fix first, right? Your company has limited resources and personnel, limited time as well. Where do we put our time and our resources on which of these vulnerabilities? So the NVD helps us with being able to, with the tools or like the way for us to actually measure the severity. So we call it the severity scores. And then also security tools integration. Now, most of the tools that we use in the cyberspace, they feed off the National Vulnerability Database. And then we have vulnerability management, compliance and reporting, research and development, right? So we are going to look at these individually, but before we do, if you are looking to get into our cybersecurity entry-level course, that is for anybody who wants to start off, you know, in the security space from scratch, whether you have some IT background or not, this is the right path for you. No coding, no prior background needed, no degree needed. You are going to go through the training. We take you from the knowledge piece, you know, build you onto the skills portion, get to work with some of the popular tools in the cyberspace, and then you jump into our GRC internship, which is the follow up on the cybersecurity entry-level course. And then we also do job placement assistance, where we help you prep you for job interviews and help you land a job. And then we also give you one-on-one coaching as well. And then for our PCI, this is for folks who are already in the cybersecurity space or IT space. If you want to specialize in the most lucrative area of cybersecurity, then PCI is the way to go, right? So if you are looking to jump into the PCI space, our next cohort, we were supposed to start ending of this month, but we are going to start on the 4th of April. So kindly visit our website, Eretmis Academy, and you'll be able to get on there as well. Now with our GRC, we started our new GRC internship, the cybersecurity GRC internship. The next cohort is going to be on 18th May. So if you're not able to join the one that just started, kindly make it a point to jump onto this one. This is where your real world cybersecurity experience starts from. You are going to be working on 10 major projects for 2 of our sister companies in real time, right? So you're going to have that experience, and you're also going to be in a team, and you are going to work in teams. So you get that soft skills experience in the cyberspace also as well. And our YouTube and our WhatsApp, kindly, you know, join our WhatsApp channel for any updates on any of the programs that we are running, and then also on Cyber Chat and all our cybersecurity happenings. And then for YouTube, agenda 1 million by October 2024 is what we are pushing for. We are currently at 388K on YouTube. So your support is needed. Spread the word. Visit the site. We have a lot of good info on there, and we are growing not simply because we just want to grow, but the information that we have on there, all the cyber chats, like what we are doing right now, we post it on there, which is very helpful. And this is like all that is free information that we are giving to the community. So let's jump back into some of the use cases of the National Vulnerability Database in cybersecurity, right? So we looked at centralized vulnerability data. So it helps us to have a centralized database whereby we can always refer from and then get more information about vulnerabilities that we might encounter. And this helps us in our planning process in everything that we do in security, right? Just like how on the health side that we started with, similar is what we have here. So centralized vulnerability data, we all pull from the same, and everybody in the world, I mean everybody who is in the security space. Now, when it comes to the standardized security severity score, right? NIST has also come up with, or they came up with the severity score, whereby they give us like a scoring number for all vulnerabilities, all known vulnerabilities, right? So we call this severity scoring system the Common Vulnerability Scoring System, is CVSS. So if you see CVSS anywhere, your mind should first go to vulnerabilities, and two, you should look at the score, and then also they give you the quantitative score and the qualitative score, right? So it's going to be a 10 for quantitative, and the qualitative is going to be critical, right? So they have that high, low, critical, medium, and then they also have like the numbers on there to help you really differentiate between like what is what. Now, for the Common Vulnerability Scoring System, currently they have two systems going on. They had one, which was the 2.0. Now they have 3.0, right? And they are both going side by side. And I think eventually they're going to do away with 2.0 and just stick with 3.0. Just like how with ICD, they have a newer version now, so similar is what they are doing here. Now, this score helps organizations to really assess the potential impact of vulnerabilities that they identified, and also help with the prioritization aspect of it when it comes to triaging, right? So that way they can plan accordingly and respond accordingly also. Now, this is an example of a vulnerability scan with Nexus. Now, what I was talking about, if you do a vulnerability scan, right, the name of the vulnerability is going to appear here. On the left side, you are going to see the scoring system. So the CVB score, the CVSS score is 10. This is the quantitative. Now, the qualitative score is critical, right? So 10 equal to critical. Now, 9.8 is also critical. 7.5 is high. Now, this scoring system, like I just mentioned, we have two now. We have 2.0 and 3.0. We are going to look at the difference between the two here shortly. So this is just a screenshot from a scan that was done, a vulnerability scan that was conducted with Nexus Essentials, right? This is just to show you how it looks. Now, Nexus is a vulnerability scanning tool. Where did they get this information? Because this information is from the National Vulnerability Database. So where did they get this information? They don't generate this on their own. They get this information from the National Vulnerability Database. And that we are going to lead into our next topic, that is security tool integration. So tools like vulnerability scanning tools like Nexus, the example that we looked at, when they do the vulnerability scan, if there was no national vulnerability database, they had to find their own way of presenting the vulnerabilities to the end users, whoever did the scan. So without the national vulnerability database, I think we were going to run into issues, because Nexus will rate the vulnerabilities in one way, Qualys will rate it in a different way, another tool will rate it in a different way, and we wouldn't really be able to, pinpoint exactly the priority level of this type of vulnerability. And also, if we had the same vulnerability, different vulnerability scanning tools were going to label it differently, right? Just like in the health side, if we World Health, there was no World Health Organization that was labeling all these type of diseases and and naming it. A disease in the United States will be named, differently than a disease somewhere else. Right now, I get it. The language is not the same, but we will know it is the same type of disease, even if they translate it into
40 people got killed today.
Even if they translate it into, please make sure you unmute yourself. Even if they translate it into their native language, right? So the security integration for softwares, vulnerability softwares and SIM tools and the rest, they all integrate with the national vulnerability database, and that is how they are able to, give you the vulnerability scores and all that, and you don't have to do all that legwork of going to research through the national vulnerability database to identify the vulnerabilities that you discovered, right? So this allows for good automation, and then also easy dissemination of information, and then also if there is any new vulnerabilities that have been discovered, they are updated in real time in all these vulnerability scanning tools that we have out there. So one use case is tool integration. Now, vulnerability management, right? Obviously, with what we've looked at, everything that we get in terms of prioritizing our vulnerabilities that we find, looking at the scoring, they all contribute when it comes to the management of vulnerabilities, right? So the national database helps us with researching, looking at remediation strategies, and learning more about the vulnerabilities themselves, right? So that way we'll be able to plan accordingly, and probably whatever we're doing wrong, we are going to correct that and do away with that type of vulnerability. So vulnerability management, and then also we are going to look at compliance and reporting. So there are some audits, or there are some security frameworks which, when we used to do audits, we are required to label or use the scoring and the labeling system from the National Vulnerability Database. It's a requirement, actually. FISMA is one. I think HIPAA and the rest, they are also one. If there are any vulnerabilities identified, we have to actually state the type of vulnerability and label it accordingly, right? So in terms of compliance and reporting, the National Vulnerability Database also helps us with that aspect of security as well. Now, research and development, there are a lot of, now this is a very huge space in the cyber space, right? When it comes to research and development, it cuts across vulnerability researchers, penetration testers, or ethical hackers. How do they research into vulnerabilities that they find, right? When you do pen testing, the National Vulnerability Database and other exploit database from offensive security, they are very useful, because if I'm an attacker and I'm an ethical hacker, I want to break into your system, right? I'll do my scan just like the scan that I showed you with Nmap, or probably like a tool like hackers don't really use Nexus and the rest. They will do Nmap, do a port scan. They identify the services or the systems that you are running or the programs you are running. Now they'll go on Google, check, hey, what is the vulnerability with this software? Google will give him that information. They will go to the National Vulnerability Database, go and read about that vulnerability. If it is exploitable, how easy or how simple can we exploit it? They will go to other databases to check. But what they are doing research, because eventually, if they're able to break your network, they are going to give you all that information and how they were able to, what vulnerability they identified and the type and all that, right? Also for us as security professionals in the company, when we discover any vulnerabilities, we will be able to learn more about it by researching on the National Vulnerability Database. And on the National Vulnerability Database, they don't just talk about the vulnerability. They also give you a list of things you can do to protect yourself, right? And then also, so I'll just end it there. They give you how to protect, a list of things that you can do to protect yourself. And then what I wanted to say was that they also list the software and the hardware that are susceptible to those types of vulnerabilities, right? So it is a very good tool that you can use for research and development also as well. So now let's go to the components of the National Vulnerability Database. Like, what are the aspects of it, right? There are so many components come together to make it. Now, one key one is the vulnerability scoring system, the common vulnerability scoring system, the vulnerability data, and others that we are going to look at here shortly. Right. So we are going to first look at one big component is the scoring, the vulnerability scoring system. We talked a little bit more about it when we were going through. Now, the purpose of this scoring system is to provide an open framework of rating severity of vulnerabilities that we identify within the cyberspace, right? It assigns scores based on different parameters that NIST has put in place. And we are going to look at some of these parameters as we move on. Now, so we are looking at the purpose. We all know the purpose why we have this, to help with, prioritizing and to know the level or how the impact of the vulnerability if it has to be taken advantage of by a threat. Now, the scoring metrics, like I was saying, we have two, right? We have the two versions, the 2.0 and 3.0. Now, the scoring metrics is based on some of the factors they take into consideration in coming up with the scoring metrics is the base. They have like environmental scores that they also use to help come up with the vulnerability severity, right? So this is just a little bit about what they do, but they do more extensive. So it's a very comprehensive view on the vulnerability when it comes to this, like the scoring system, right? Now, this is the two versions. So the old version or the old version is 2.0, obviously. And for 2.0, if you were 0, you were scored 0 to 3.9, you were low. 4.4 to 6.9 was a medium. 7 to 10 was a high. Now with the new scoring, so with the old one, there was no critical, right? With the new scoring, from 1 to 0.1 to 3.9 is a low. 4 to 6.9 is a medium. 7 to 8.9 is a high, and then 9 to 10 is a critical. So this is the difference between the two ratings that we have now, the two, scoring systems that we have now. Now, when it comes to another aspect of the National Vulnerability Database is the vulnerability data, right? So vulnerability entries and then search and filter. So when you go on there, you'll be able to find vulnerabilities using the unique ID, which is the CVE ID, or you can type in maybe some keywords that will be able to, you'll be able to pull up like the vulnerability, or, with the search and filter, you can also narrow it down by the publication, when it was published by. So when you go on there, you can narrow it down to vulnerabilities that were discovered in 2024, or vulnerabilities that were discovered in, depending on what you are doing on there, right? So that is one aspect of the National Vulnerability Database. Now we are going to look at the integration with other frameworks or other standards. So we have the Common Vulnerability and Exposures, that is the CVE system, right? Now this system can also be a whole cyber chat on its own. So we're not really going to dive too much into it, but it tracks all vulnerabilities also as well, looking at it from different angles. Now, the National Vulnerability Database draws their vulnerabilities from the CVE system, but then the National Vulnerability Database also adds more to the vulnerabilities that are already on the CVE system, right? By adding the scoring system and then the impact assessment and references to it as well, right? So you can dig more into this. Tonight we are, diving really deep into the vulnerability side of the house. Now, when it comes to impact metrics, which is also another area or another aspect of the National Vulnerability Database, we have vulnerability trends impact score. So the impact score, obviously, we are using our CVSS score. This helps us to, we've talked extensively about it, to plan and also to identify what to do about these vulnerabilities that have been discovered. And then also one key aspect with the impact, we are looking at the impact as it's, we are looking at the impact of the vulnerability in the light of confidentiality, integrity, and availability, right? Everything that we are doing in security, the risks that we are trying to minimize we cannot minimize risks without looking at confidentiality, integrity, and availability, right? If any of these are compromised, or if confidentiality, integrity, or availability, if any of the three are compromised, then risks would have materialized at that point, right? So the impact is based on these three, which are the three pillars of security, right? Now, vulnerability trends, the National Vulnerability Database also helps us to kind of guesstimate other types of vulnerabilities that will be in there, and then also the trend of vulnerabilities as they come in, right? So with that, we are going to jump into other relevant data that is part of the National Vulnerability Database. So the first that we are going to look at is the Common Platform Enumeration, that is the CPE, and then there's CWE, that is the Common Weakness Enumeration. This is also a very good database. It has all the weaknesses in software and hardware, so also dig into it. It's also really good for vulnerability planning and vulnerability management itself, right? And this is also another platform that also has similar information with software and hardware vulnerabilities that are out there. So all the information is drawn from all these areas to make the National Vulnerability Database. And then also we have security checklists and misconfigurations. All these are also included in there. So different types of, so it's not just vulnerability as it pertains to hardware and software, but misconfigurations and others are also huge vulnerabilities that are in the cyberspace, right? And with that, we are going to look at an example of how the vulnerability database looks like. Now, for everybody, for learning purposes, once we're done, just Google NVD or NIST NVD in Google. It will take you directly to the page. If there is a little bit of time, we can just, go on there and have a look, right? But if, let's say, you go there, you search for a vulnerability, it's going to look something like this. And for all vulnerabilities, I failed to mention this. All vulnerabilities, they all have, they've all been labeled, right? They all have a name of some sort. Now, their names are not, they have their names, and then they also have their vulnerability numbers. So the vulnerability numbers, they are what we use to search for these vulnerabilities, right? And there is no one vulnerability that has two of these numbers. It's just like social security number. I'm not sure if one person can have two or more social security numbers. Probably it's not possible. So same thing, they are labeled using the CVE system, and the first four, like you can easily tell, is the year, and then the CVE system gives it the vulnerability, the number, maybe probably the time it was discovered. So if we are labeling and we are at 741, the next one that will be discovered probably is going to be 742, right? Now that I'm speculating, I don't know that one for sure, but I'm assuming just logically that is how it is going to follow trend. Now I know this for a fact. This is the year always. So for this vulnerability, you see how they have the description, the reference, right? Then when you come down here, sometimes they'll have like the systems that are affected by this and the software that are affected. And if you were on the page, it will give us some insights into how we can fix these vulnerabilities. So with that, we are going to move on to the impact of the National Vulnerability Database when it comes to cybersecurity in general. I think the case has been made. The impact is huge, right? Without the National Vulnerability Database, I don't know what, frankly, we would have done in security, right? We would have all been around not really knowing what to do when it comes to vulnerabilities that have been identified. Because of this, we are able to share information. When we identify a vulnerability in New York and we put it on the list, somebody in Tokyo will be able to reference and see that, okay, so this is the vulnerability, these are the symptoms, and these are the systems it affects. And when they have something similar, they will know, they can easily reference using the same vulnerability number, right? Now that the same vulnerability can be in Tokyo and can be here, and we wouldn't know that it's the same vulnerability. So the National Vulnerability Database is a brilliant idea. And I think they kind of mimic the health side, right? They kind of probably borrowed the concept from the health side. So that is why they have that similarity. That is why we use that also to make it kind of make sense, right? The grandpasta make it make sense. If we can understand from the health perspective and we are all sick, we go to hospitals, systems also get sick. So how do we go about identifying the type of sickness and the type of illness? That is, so the impact is huge. Now there is some twist to everything that we talked about, right? There is always a legal disclaimer. And this is one that is on NIST's website when it comes to National Vulnerability Database. So it states, you know, I took some out because it was a bit longer, right? But it states that the information that they get for the National Vulnerability Database, information on there, right? NIST does not test or try to exploit these softwares that have these vulnerabilities. So in so doing, you know, people are funny sometimes. They might use information for free from NIST, and then they can turn around and try to sue them because, oh, this wasn't accurate or that wasn't accurate. So that is why they have this. So they are saying that if you are using the National Vulnerability Database, NIST makes no warranties or any kind of and express or implied or statutory, including without limitation. So this is kind of legal, some legal jargons, but all that they are saying is that if you are using the National Vulnerability Database, you're on your own. Okay. And this is all that we have in the cyberspace. So you cannot come back and say, you know, you use the information on there and you try to protect your systems and an attacker was still able to breach you, so you are taking them to court. So if you are using it for the correctness, the accuracy, reliability, and all that, you have to verify and you have to, you know, do everything on your own, right? So you're on your own. You cannot hold them responsible for anything that you use from the National Vulnerability Database. But then also just from industry experience and knowledge, this is the most accurate vulnerability database that we have. So, but just thought it was kind of ironic when I saw this type of disclaimer on there. Right? So with that, we are going to run up for tonight, and then we'll open the floor for questions. And if Michael is here, Michael can run through the different places that everybody is joining us from, right? But so our WhatsApp group, we are going to post the link here shortly. You can join, and then also our YouTube. Kindly, if you find this informative, this is helpful, you are always, you know, getting something from this cyber chat for your toolbox. Kindly, please, you know, subscribe. At least that is the least that you can do to support the Eretmis family, right? And then also join the WhatsApp group. Now, for our entry level, our new cohort is starting on the 28th. If you are looking to break into cybersecurity, this is the place to be. It gives you everything that you need. For our PCI, we talked about that also as well. Our new PCI is starting on the 4th of April. And then for our internship, we are starting our new cohort on 18th May. That is 2 months thereabout from today, right? So I appreciate everybody's time. Now, questions for the group, and we are going to wrap up for tonight. Go ahead, Ellen.
I've got a question.
Yes, go ahead.
All right. So we've got all of these tools that are potentially connected to the database, right?
Yes.
And what they're doing is they're leveraging the information in there, and they're using that information to, should I say, modulate what they provide to consumers or to their customers. That's correct, is that?
Yes.
Okay. So does the what's it called, NVD, do they charge these companies to leverage that information?
No.
This is interesting. Okay.
Yeah, so they are giving all that information for free.
For free, but then also they use these companies to update that database at the same time, right?
So the information that they are gathering is from the industry, right? From everybody and information in the public space. So they just gather all that, do some more research on it, score it, and then they'll post it on there.
And move on. Okay. Okay. And who is accountable? There has to be some sort of like accountability element here that helps with the scoring, isn't it?
So in terms of the scoring, they have their own parameters that they use for the scoring, right? So we can, for that is why like they have like a whole system, the CVSS scoring system, where they had the 2.0 and now they have the 3.0, right? So they have like their own scoring system going on, and they have different, I think we briefly touched on that. They have like different areas that they look at to give it a score.
Thank you so much for that.
Yes, you're welcome. Ellen, please go ahead.
Yeah, Dr. Adu, just a quick question. The MITRE attack also, or the vulnerability there, is it part of NIST also?
So they also get that from, so they kind of cross, trade information. So they will get some from NIST. NIST will also get some from them, right? NIST is open. So NIST itself doesn't really necessarily do their own research and discover vulnerabilities. They pick vulnerabilities from the public space in the IT and security space, right? And then they will, they will merge it with what they have, label it, give it like a scoring system, and then they will put it on there. So MITRE and ATT&CK, CWE, CVE, they get information from all of them as well.
All right, thank you.
Yes. Amma, please go ahead.
Dr. Thank you very much for the presentation. So my question is, how do they name a new vulnerability? Is it automatic, or how do they come by a new vulnerability name? For example, if one is detected without a name, like a new one is detected, how is it named?
Okay, so for all these vulnerabilities, I can talk about the numbering system, right? The numbering system that they have is going to be the year it was discovered. So you have the CVE system is how they like what they use. So it's going to be CVE dash the year, right? 2024. And then depending on when it was discovered, so probably when 2024 starts, they start from 001 and then they keep labeling, right? So whenever that vulnerability comes in is the number is going to get, right? So, but for the name itself, let's say it's a type of like Trojan horse and this specific name. For those ones, I think it's based on how it was discovered, and they are not really big on like a name like we can say Amma or Kwame. They are more focused on the numbering. That is what they use for their naming system.
Thank you.
Yes, go ahead, Kwame.
My question is that we mostly get these vulnerabilities from vendors that we work with, like maybe Windows 08 or Windows 7 is out of date and you have to do your patching and all that. And then the question that I want to ask is, as a cybersecurity professional, when you get these vulnerabilities, right? You make it known to your team, right? Expecting them to apply the patches. But at what point can you just say that, okay, I put this out there and they did it? Like, you getting confirmation that these patches were applied or they were updated. Sometimes you just take it and then that's it. So I just want to know if you have any insight as to what you, as a cybersecurity professional, what is required by your team after you put those updates out there.
Okay, so great point, Kwame. So Kwame is asking if we identify a vulnerability, or maybe probably there's an update, and you are the cybersecurity analyst, information security assurance person, guy or girl, and you send a ticket to maybe IT folks to do their updates, or if there's a patch or we've discovered a vulnerability and it has to be fixed, how do you verify that they've done it, right? So if it was, let's say, for like a scan that was done to discover this type of vulnerability, once it's fixed, you do the same scan to make sure if it is an update, let's say Windows, if they update it, it's going to be updated on the whole entire, if it is for the whole entire enterprise, you are going to see an update. I mean, it is obvious. If it's on a specific server, you probably just have to check that specific server to, if an update is installed, you will know. right? So you can go through like the logs and see, updates that were done by when, right? So there are different, types of vulnerabilities. But when it comes to just like the software aspect, that like these are some of the ways that you can verify.
So, let me follow up again. So, I'm asking these questions because at the point, say these vulnerabilities come on Windows aspect, right? You send it out there, then the person confirms they push the patch, fine. But then mostly when it comes to the Mac, right? Then it is know that most of these Mac patch don't come up, like we barely get them, and it is believed that Mac is autonomous on in terms of defense. So mostly not much of patching is applied to Mac machines. Any thought on that?
So in terms of the patches, how many times you get patches and all that, it is strictly from the vendor, right? So if the vendor has a patch, they will push it out. If they don't have any, then you're not going to get any. And you cannot create your own patch for Microsoft or for Apple OS, right? The owners of the software, they are the ones who are always going to come up with a patch or with the updates. So as you get them is as you install or as you are going to patch or update. But if you don't get any, you just don't get any, there's nothing that you can. Right? So I know for Windows is every now and then they have more updates than any of the Apple devices. So I think that is the trend.
Yes, sir.
Eric, please go ahead.
Yeah, Dr. Edu, I have a question with regard to vulnerability. The first question is that when you find a vulnerability, what do you do first as an assessor? And the second question is that if you put patches in place, how do you know they're working?
So if you put patches in place, you are not, I'll answer your last question first. You are not the maker or the owner of these patches, right? So the software owners, they are the ones who are going to come up with a patch if a vulnerability has been discovered. Now, they are the ones who are supposed to do the testing and make sure this patch actually works. For us, as the end users, we are just going to install the patches. That is the best we can do for security. Whether it works or not, it is really not up to us to decide, right? We just hope they knew what they were doing when they sent us those patches, right? Now, and also one thing that we can do is before you install a patch on your enterprise system or on your whole entire production line, we have to make sure we test the patch to make sure it's not going to cause any crazy thing on our network. Sometimes you can install a patch and your laptop becomes a Christmas tree, right? And this is like some real world experience, right? It will start blinking and doing all sort of crazy stuff. And that is because just simply from the patch, right? There can be problems and issues with the patch also as well. So mostly organizations, they have to test the patch in a sandbox, on a virtual machine. And if it works fine, then they can move it to their main production line, right? But whether it works or not, we assume the software owners, they knew better. So they probably tested and they made sure it works before they pushed it out, right? So we cannot really determine that on our own. Now, when you discover vulnerabilities, first thing you do is you are going to prioritize your vulnerabilities, and then you come up with a remediation strategy, right? So if it is 4 or 5 vulnerabilities, which ones are you going to fix first based on criticality, medium, high, low, whatever the labeling will be. And then from there, you are going to come up with your remediation strategy and exactly what you're going to do. And 2, as a cybersecurity analyst, cybersecurity, or any role that you find yourself, sometimes you are not, or most of the times, you are not going to be the one necessarily installing the patch or doing the remediation. So you find the control owners and you send it to them. Like Kwame was saying, you put in a ticket, hey, Eric, you are supposed to do this. We're supposed to install this, and Eric will go ahead and do it, right? And all you have to do is do a follow-up. Was it done? Yes, it was done, and then that's it. So, but it is up to you to prioritize and identify which ones we are going to fix first, and then, move from there. Come up with a remediation strategy and timelines. right? And we'll move from there. So we'll move to, I think that was, last one was Eric, right? And whilst we waiting, if there are no more, oh, Shongo, please go ahead.
Yes, Dr. Do, I just want to ask you a real quick common sense question. Do software developers know how to develop software without vulnerabilities?
So there is no software in this world that has no vulnerabilities. The one that we are using now, Zoom, every software has a vulnerability. If we are using it fine and we don't have any issues, is because we've not discovered those vulnerabilities yet. Because every software, there's thousands, if not millions of code that was written to make it work. And it's human beings writing, although we have automated systems to test, do dynamic and static, test and stress test and all that, still, there's a vulnerability in every software. It's just a matter of time for it to be discovered. Right? So that is the best that we can do now. Maybe it is always going to be there because there's a lot of moving pieces when it comes to software. Even with hardware, same thing, a lot of moving pieces. So what we think is secured now, or something that we are doing, somebody will find a way around it, and it becomes, unsecured. So we have to find another way to make it better. Just like how we've had like a couple of encryption algorithms. Probably when they came up with encryption like the DES, they thought it was the best thing that ever happened. It was the strongest. Somebody just cracked it. Oh, well, we have to find another one, right? So software, there's always going to be vulnerabilities. Known ones can easily be fixed. Unknown ones, when discovered, becomes 0 day until we find a fix for it. So there's always going to be, but the best that we can do is to train our software developers, make sure that they are following best secure coding practices. And then also from design perspective, right? Now I think most companies are shifting from that mindset, because security shouldn't be an afterthought after you've designed and you've done your software already. It should be part of the whole entire process, from concept to design to actually writing the software. Security should be part of everything that you are doing. So it should be inbuilt. It shouldn't be an afterthought. So you're not going to finish building your house and you're like, what can I do for security? Right? Security should be part of the whole entire concept from scratch. So that is how we will be able to prevent some of these silly mistakes, that will cause us gravely or cause the company gravely. So maybe that is my 2 cents on vulnerabilities when it comes to software. All right. So with that, some shout outs to everybody who is joining us. If you didn't put in where you're joining us, you can still do. Eric from Toronto. We have Frank from Lagos. Thank you. It's, I think, past midnight in Lagos. Dallas, Brian from Dallas, Talks from Dallas, Chicago, Andy, Sam, Cincinnati, New York, Daniels, Evans, Minnesota, and there are some hands up. I'm going to give you the floor. Atlanta, Felix, Texas. There's a lot of Texas. I think Texas might probably eventually win the live event. A lot of Texas. Georgia, Mike. New York, Bronze, Elijah. We have Abina from Frederick, Maryland. Glenda from North Carolina. We have another Maryland, Rosie. Vegas. Oh, Vegas. Richard from Vegas. Prince from Illinois. No, not Illinois, Chicago. Okay, Chicago, Illinois. We have, Vance from London. Oh, Vance, thank you. It's probably like 3 a.m., 4 a.m. in London. Maryland, Ucheba from Maryland, and the list goes on. So, okay, Abiyomi from Nigeria, and the list goes on. Yeah, I appreciate everybody's time. Good luck. Please go ahead and we'll wrap up for tonight.
Oh, so it's not really a question, but I was just thinking loud about the legal implication Nis was talking about. So I was like thinking, let's say WHO say, oh, there was a disease and we found a medication, a vaccine, and but if you take the medication, if you die, it's not our fault. Like it put a hole in the, like nobody's will be scared to take that vaccine. So if they're saying if you use this, you follow this step and you get hacked, then you can sue us. So I will start having issues with following what you're putting out there.
Okay, so there is this, hey, like people and companies, some people just love litigation, right? Any single space that they get. I mean, NIST is a huge organization. So if you take them on and you go to, and in court, we are talking law, not truth necessarily, right? So if they make a good argument, they'll be able to get some money from NIST, but that, is their jail-free card. So they are not saying they are not responsible for the data they have on there, but they are saying when you are using it, you are on your own, right? So you are using it for planning purposes. You are using it for your vulnerability management, but don't come back and say because these vulnerabilities were not exactly, or the severity was maybe more than they put out there, so you are going to take them on. Like that is what they are trying to prevent, right? So I think like there's a case of where I think that is a while where like somebody sued who like McDonald's or any of those companies because their coffee was too hot and it spilled on them and they had an accident or something. I mean, didn't you know your coffee was hot? Come on. But they won. Yeah, because there was no label on the coffee that said it was hot. So that is why if you go to companies and have these, disclaimers on there, they are just trying to save their behind when they have to go to court, right? So it doesn't mean the data they are putting on there is not accurate. Now, in the whole entire world, there is no data, so you have no option, but that is the only thing that you have, the only option that you have, right? So they are putting that on there just to let you know, hey, if you want to, get some money from NIST, you ain't getting nothing. Right. Go ahead, Kwame.
Well, I wanted, is it possible I could get 5 minutes of your time after this section?
Yeah, we can talk.
Okay. So can I call you or you going to give me a call?
Okay, give me a call like 10 minutes after.
Okay, thank you.
Nebichi, please go ahead.
I was just gonna say what you said. It's like it's more about, the disclaimer, let me just give an example. Like when I first came to this country, I saw that they were throwing food away on campus. I'm like, there's a homeless shelter down the street and there are homeless people everywhere. They say if they get sick, they'll sue you even though they didn't have dinner. It's more about, the disclaimer than it is a confidence in your tool, because they know that even if you make a mistake implementing it, you still come and sue us. So use at your own discretion.
Yeah, true. And like I've also heard a case whereby there was an accident, right? A policeman was on the scene and he brought out the driver, like the driver was the only person in the car that like he was driving. He brought out one driver who was who was stuck in the car, right? Couldn't get out. As soon as he brought the driver out, the whole entire car caught on fire. So like less seconds. So this guy probably would have died in it. Later on, he sued the police department because of that he was paralyzed. Apparently, the policeman just dragged him out, and his neck had an issue, and he was paralyzed. So he sued them, and he won. Right. So they always have to be. I mean, people they just love litigation. Even if you are helping, your help can turn out to be wrong. So we just have to be careful. So they have that on there just to save themselves all that drama. All right, Jason, go ahead, and Eric, and we'll wrap up for tonight.
Okay, Doc, just to add to that, Walgreens also has a rule that even though the food is good for another week, they throw it out and they have workers watch the food at the back. So you cannot give away the food, and people have started coming there, and so they even have to add security to watch the food along with the workers. So if they give it to homeless people and they sue, or somebody takes it and they sue, they would be held liable. Also, to add to your police,
statement. Doc, the reason why police officers, as soon as they graduate, take off their uniforms in America and in Jamaica, that if something happens and you're on the scene in uniform, it is your duty, once you're in uniform, to act. So even if you're just coming off of the academy, you have to act. And if you don't act, you will be held liable. So that's why they take off their uniforms as soon as they're going home, just to protect themselves.
Okay. Thank you, Jason, for that input. Eric, go ahead. And there are some more shout outs on here. Edmond from New Jersey, Benedict, Massachusetts.
Yeah, Dr.
Go ahead,
Edu,
Eric.
adding to what you're saying, right? We as nurses, we have the Good Samaritan law, whereby if you're going home or something, you see something happening, you can just go and help. But then they too, it's at your mercy too, because they will come after you. And before I became a nurse, I was working at Price Chopper in New York. And what happened is that we were told if somebody, even if you're in the shop and somebody come and steal, just look on for the person to take whatever they want to take and go. Because if you go defending the person, you're on your own. So what you're saying is true.
Yep. Glenda, please go ahead.
So like the guy was saying about the food to the homeless, and he is correct, because it's a health risk to give food to the homeless, even though you don't want to see restaurants throwing food out, but you don't know what food allergies people have, and and they can turn around and sue you.
Great point. Great point. Great. So I mean, we are learning a lot tonight on the legal side of this as well. So we're just going to give some shout outs. Diallo, New York, Andy from Ghana, and then we have Zachary from NC and Yao from Toronto, and I think that will be about it, right? Everybody else who was on here that I couldn't mention: Monday from New York, Patho from New York, from New Jersey, Walt, New Jersey, Lord, London. Thank you for all the folks who are joining us. It's like 3 a.m., 4 a.m. at your place, but you're still joining us. I hope everybody got something. At least you learned something new tonight, and that is the intent of why we do Cyber Chat, is to inform and educate our community about cybersecurity stuff. So if this is the first time you're joining us, kindly join us again on different sessions every Friday night, 7 p.m. Eastern. And we are going to be on next week as well. I appreciate everybody's time. We are wrapping up for tonight. Have a blessed weekend, and we will meet next week for another edition of Cyber Chat.
Dr. Edu, I'm going to call you after the other gentleman calls you. Please,
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Good night, everyone.
All right, Doc. Have
Good
a good night.
Thank you.
Morning, Doc.
Good morning, Jason.